So I've got the game paused and a screenshot on your screen. Well, what does that mean? Well, I'll explain in just a bit. For those of you just joining me and just discovering my little corner of the internet, my name is Michael and I want to welcome you to Sovereign Gaming in Life Sims, the YouTube channel where I build worlds, lots, and share my thoughts on video games in the life simulation gaming space. And yes, this here is pretty much a screenshot of SimCity. I'm just going to be using some effects to like zoom in and out and whatnot. And the reason why I am starting here is just to really show you guys where we've come in terms of SimCity's development. In the last episode, we did a mansion build, which is outside of the SimCity core. Right now, we are coming back to the core. And I just wanted to explain a few things just before we jump in today's speed build. So firstly, the neighborhood that we are going to be working on is the Midtown neighborhood, and I'll explain a little more about the vision as I start the speed build, but I just kind of wanted to show you guys the lay of the land here and what the next couple of episodes of the speed build series is really going to look like. So there's about, oh, I got to count them up here. I've got 3 on the east block and I've got 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5 on the west block. So I've got about 8 lots that I need to build out for Midtown here. And I've got them all outlined in those blue squares there. I'm going to outline the one that we're doing today in the lighter blue square because we are going to switch things up and we are going to do a community lot that I really haven't built yet in the game. And that is going to be the stylist community lot that came with the Ambitions expansion pack, and I've got a pretty good vision for that. So yeah, that's really the vision that I have for Midtown here. This is kind of the area that we're working with, and the next couple of episodes will be centered around Midtown. And yeah, I got some great builds here for you guys, and I think that you are all going to really enjoy them as we build them out. So with that said, let's just get started on the actual speed build portion of today's episode. My big idea for today's build was to make another Sims 1 reference, and in particular, I really wanted to reference the Gast District. Now that's Gast with a T at the end, as you guys would have seen in the title of the video and likely in the thumbnail as well. And yes, it is a Sims 1 reference from the Sims 1 Superstar specifically. And what the Gast District was in the Sims 1 was that it was the area that you would take your Sims to really try and pursue the fashion career within the Superstar gameplay mechanics. So you try to build up your fame score and all that. You would be able to do photo shoots. I believe you could also do runways. Hopefully I'm smart enough to put up some screenshots of the Gast District from The Sims 1 just to kind of show you guys where we're going. And yeah, it was another place that you could also do a lot of spa activities and, you know, use those spa amenities. I'm not necessarily going to incorporate the spa portions of the Gast District in today's build, but I did want to actually try and recreate a little bit of it using it as that reference point and to really reimagine it as a set of fashion offices or creative offices, since office space isn't really something that is playable within The Sims 3, except for the couple of rabbit hole buildings that we get, which is fine. Like, I don't mind that at all. But yeah, the first thing that you'll see me do is you'll see me place down a subway station. Now, I've been very careful about where I'm placing subway stations and all that, and in a future video, likely when I finish up building all of the other subway stations, I'll share with you guys like my vision on the actual subway network, because to me, those subway stations need to actually make sense and they need to correspond with stations that would make sense to have in SimCity here. So there's a whole vision for that. I've written out everything that I needed to write out in terms of where I want specific subway stations, and I've placed them in places that I think make sense and are accessible to Sims across the inner parts of SimCity. So, you know, I'm very happy with the way that the subway station actually is placed within this lot. And what I'm going to be doing on the eastern block to the lot just directly adjacent to this one across the street in Midtown is I'm going to be placing another subway station there. So it kind of suggests that there is an entire underground platform station just underneath the street between the two lots. This vision will likely be better explained when I actually get to building out the eastern block of Midtown there. So, you know, you guys will just have to wait and hold off and see how that comes alive from there. The only problem with doing that is that I have to name the subway stations. So naming the subway stations isn't necessarily a big deal, but if you have them as the same name, then it can kind of get confusing. It's not like players really click on the subway station to go to a specific station anyways, but yeah, usually Sims are pretty good at wayfinding the different subway stations on their own without having the player to really intervene if they are choosing to use subway stations. So I'm not too worried about that personally, but I will be renaming the other station just so that it matches this one and all that. Like I might rename this one like platform, like the Gast Station Platform 1, and then the other one will be the Gast Station Platform 2. So yeah, there's a bit of a naming scheme here. And the same issue goes with the central station, just north of the two office building high-rise rabbit holes. So those have to get renamed as well. So that's a little note for myself. But anyway, today's vision is all about re-envisioning and reimagining the Gast District as an office tower and an office block, and a place where you actually do the design portion of the of a fashion. Like this is where the designs actually come alive. Now, it's probably already showing on screen here, or it's probably already passed, but one thing that I have to do when building out lots generally, and especially when using rabbit hole buildings, is that I have to outline where I'm placing the rabbit hole tower from the late night expansion pack. And in this case, like what you have to do is you have to kind of outline it and then place it, because you can't move the rabbit hole after you place it. It's a one and done deal that you really have to place. So that's what I did in the beginning of the episode. I just kind of outlined it, and then I built out the rest of the structure so that it would be something that I can actually merge into the rest of the structure with. Because if you use move objects on, you can actually merge a late night rabbit hole into the rest of a structure. That was something that I discovered, but you can't do it the other way around. So that's why I had to choose the order to construct these buildings, and that I had to choose. And obviously, like, part of the structure here is another object from the Roaring Heights world DLC, and that's the Roaring Heights, I guess the shell roof objects that are really just skyscraper buildings essentially. And I'm kind of laughing at myself because I discovered them when I rediscovered them, I should say, when constructing one of the lots in one of the earlier builds here. And so now that I've rediscovered those Roaring Heights shell objects, I am probably overusing them, if I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, but I just love the way that they look and the way that they really beef out the skyline. And that's something that I'm trying to be very careful about using in this episode and in future episodes going forward. Essentially, the Midtown neighborhood is a natural extension from the downtown in the central business district. However, one thing that I really want to emulate in the Midtown neighborhood is I really want to start crawling down from, you know, towers and taller structures, and I want it to crawl down into more mid-rise structures and mid-rise buildings. So part of that crawl really has to use the really use the Roaring Heights structures. And in this case, what I ended up building for the Gast District is I really wanted all of the styling services to be offered in the office tower late night shell block, whereas I wanted it to be attached to like a mid-rise hotel that also has a lot of event space to it, so that you could host a runway show just right there for you. One of the things that if I were to redo SimCity and create a world, which I don't think I'll ever redo ever again, is I would probably add in some sort of an expo center or some sort of an event center. There's one that's in Starlight Shores that came with the what do you call it, the Showtime expansion pack, and even though it's just like a shell that you can host like large venues at, or large event spaces for the Showtime careers, that might be something that I would have like incorporated into the SimCity build here. But yeah, the vision for today is really just to incorporate a little bit of event space that Sims could host, that's attached to this nice office tower that has where all of the creative designs and fashion designs really come from, like the masterminds behind it, versus the event space and event hotel that showcases what has been drummed up within those within the office tower blocks. I hope I'm explaining the vision here correctly here, but that was really the idea, is just that we got this office tower that you can get your Sims restyled at, and then they can kind of show it off on the runway in the event space for the hotel that's attached to it. Part of the storyline in my version of SimCity was when I was actually building out the film studios that came with the late night expansion pack. I essentially called it Studiotown, and there's actually a little bit of an issue with that because the game always recognizes the rabbit hole object as opposed to what the lot is actually named, so I might have to actually rename that. But anyways, part of the lore within the description there, if you decided to download the lot that I had put out along with the world, is that Studiotown was sold off with there being advancements in technology and them just not needing the space necessarily because of the introduction of more green screens and visual effects. There's a more detailed storyline in the actual lot description itself, but part of the storyline from that, like with Studiotown being sold off, and part of this lot storyline is that essentially the Gast District, or whoever owned the Gast District at that time, they kind of saw that coming, and so what they did was they invested in a piece of real estate in the downtown core to redevelop as a hotel, event space, and also office tower for them to move into. So that's kind of a little bit about the lore behind this lot in particular, and I think that it again is a really nice reference, and it pays homage to The Sims 1 and The Sims 1 Studiotown, and it just kind of continues to tell the story how Studiotown evolved, and in this case because it was something that was sold off and it just kind of didn't expand, it actually shrunk or it changed into something new. I wanted to tell the story here about how the fashion offices just kind of came about, and how that part of the industry really redeveloped into being the way that it is now, a little more urbanized in this kind of case. One thing that I did actually add into this lot throughout building it, and something that I had to be very conscious of, is again the Roaring Heights skyscraper objects. Those don't really play well when you have other floors just underneath it. Like, it's not great for the player experience, and so I try to limit as much as I can any kind of competition between the object and the rest of the playable floors. If you actually have the Roaring Heights world installed, there are some like apartments and all that use the like apartment residential lots that use these skyscraper objects, and you can play an apartment in some of the floors that are just underneath the skyscraper objects, and it really interferes with the player experience. So I was trying to avoid that as much as I can when designing out the mid-rise structure attached to the office building skyscraper. So with that said, I tried to keep everything just on that first floor that Sims can kind of just interact with. I had to build this particular mid-rise structure on a foundation, and you'll see why as we get in the as we start building out the event space on the inside, because I do add in a full-on runway, and that runway needed to be elevated, and using the little stage platforms that came with Late Night was just not going to cut it in terms of an effect. So I have essentially a foundation within a walled structure there. You'll see how it all turns out in just a minute here. But one of the things that was kind of tedious about this building was adding in those structural fins. I just wanted to give it like a bit more of intrigue with those structural fins, just kind of adding them on. It was something similar that I've done with the spa build that I had done. And, you know, looking back on the spa, even though I did an edit episode addressing all of the lots in the downtown neighborhood, the spa could be one that I actually go back to again and redo, not because of this, but because I just feel like the spa building itself, not the what do you call it, not the rabbit hole building, but the rest of the building, even though it's like really nice in terms of style, and it actually does achieve what I wanted to achieve in terms of there being a, what do you call it, in terms of the interior design and all that. I just feel like the layout of it is something that kind of bothers me in a way. But yeah, I'll have to address that one some other time, but that's not a today thing. That is an in the future thing when we actually move away from the downtown core and all that. But yeah, the fins that I added onto the building here are definitely reminiscent of that spa building. It's done much better here, in my opinion. And I even added in some lights, because one thing that I am trying to be very conscious of when doing these lot builds is how each of the lots look at night. I'm sure that, like, if you've been following along with my speed build series, you would have noticed me always like switching from night to day, and that's just something that I do, and I do apologize if that's kind of like nauseating to just kind of see all the time. But the reason why I do that is because I want something to look good at night as well as during the day. And in these urban core neighborhoods, I really want them to be very well lit, and that does include the alleyway as well. Speaking of the alleyway, one building standard that I have really applied to all of the inner city urban neighborhoods is I want there to be some sort of an alleyway just to kind of show, I just wanted there to be alleyways just to kind of add that urban grunge into SimCity. SimCity isn't a perfect city, and you guys are certainly going to see that in one of the Midtown builds that I got coming up, in terms of there being some ugliness to it here and there. And I've also got plans for other sort of uglier builds. We'll kind of see how that really turns out. For the second one I'm talking about, I haven't even attempted it yet. But anyways, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. What I really wanted to say is that I've got a standard size that I've used for the urban alleyways, and I'm sure that I've talked about it before, but it does bear repeating that even though I want some alleyways sort of activated and suitable for pedestrians to really engage with, there are other alleyways where I have purposefully wanted them to feel more grungier, or to feel like, you know, this is a place where you drive your car down just to try and find some sort of an underground parking spot or something of the sort. Here in the Gast District, it does take more of that urban grunge feel, and yeah, the alleyway here is really meant to just be that service road for dump trucks and for semi trucks to, you know, drop off their to drop off set pieces or event space pieces and all that. I really wanted it to be more of that service road type on this part of the block. So the nice thing about these alleyways, though, is because I've got them all sized to be exactly the same, it's going to connect to the other lots. And as I continue to build out the Midtown neighborhood in the subsequent episodes after this, you guys are going to really see how it all kind of comes together and how it's all linked together. Another thing that I did with the alleyways is that because I know that the lots just south of the Gast District are also going to have alleyways that are the same size, I decided to just not be afraid of putting some objects directly on the alleyway road itself, since in my opinion, cars can kind of swerve around it a little bit and just kind of continue moving past some of the objects in the middle there. So the billboard that I placed up on there was certainly something that I decided to just kind of commit to, so long as I don't put any objects on the south side of that particular alleyway. It should be fine for cars to just kind of swerve around it, theoretically, of course. The ads that I placed on the back of the Gast District were pretty great, if I'm going to be honest. It's one of my favorite parts of the lot, and a big reason for that is that it just like makes the whole urban center come alive. And as soon as I get this lot surrounded by the southern midtown lot builds that I have planned, I am really going to I'm really going to enjoy how it looks, because even after I finish this lot, when I place like the Into the Future ads and I combine them with some of the late night and showtime ads, it really made it come alive, especially at night. Like the Into the Future ads are great, and I've already sprinkled in some like Into the Future things here and there into this world. I mean, the observatory lot itself is straight up from Into the Future, so you know, to have some of those elements carry out to other lots is something that, even though it isn't a focus of SimCity, it's something that I'm not going to shy away from. And this was one of those cases where I just felt it was appropriate. Now, those Into the Future ads move. So when you're actually playing the game at night, those ads are going to continue moving, and it just helps to bring a whole new dynamic into the downtown core, aside from just static ad pictures, which do look nice and are great. But these Into the Future ones, we're just like on another level in terms of breathing a little bit more life into the night of the downtown core here. Now, something that I failed to mention about Midtown, I failed to mention a few things in the intro there just because I didn't want you guys looking at a static screen for too long. But the first thing that I wanted to mention with Midtown is that it's really going to be a mix of commercial lots and also residential lots, or sorry, community lots and residential lots. You couldn't tell, I do play City Skylines as well. And with the ratio for community lots to residential lots, it's going to be kind of switched from the downtown core where there was really only one residential lot, whereas in Midtown here I plan to have at least I know for a fact actually that I'm only going to have 2 residential lots, and the rest are going to be community lots. So as we move further away from the core, there are going to be a lot more residential opportunities to live within the downtown core here, and I think that that's going to be really nice going forward. And it just kind of goes to show like how much how mixed use this really is. If this were any other game, like a lot of the spaces that I would have been using for a lot of the mid-rise builds or some of the set dressing buildings that I would have used would have likely been reestablished as like residential rentals or something of the sort, or apartments or something. So, you know, because this is The Sims 3 and I'm limited by the game mechanics, those buildings essentially have to serve as set dressing. And to be honest, the mid-rise building and the, you know, the hotel structure, so to speak, is essentially a big piece of set dressing for this lot build as well. The runway itself, of course, you can send Sims through and have them walk down the runway if you really want to, but there's really no gameplay mechanic that allows you to actually host real fashion shows or anything of the sort. So that is, you know, in order for this lot to be a proper reference to the Gast District from The Sims 1, I felt that it was very necessary to put a lot of energy into a piece of set dressing essentially, and to allow players to actually play through the mid-rise structure that's attached to the tower. So yeah, the Midtown is really just a more of a mix between community and residential lots. And then when we actually step down into Uptown, that's going to be more residential than community lots. And so that ratio is just going to flip completely when we get to Uptown. And I've got some really exciting builds lined up for that one too, because there are some unique community lots that I think players will really like to have in their games when I actually get around to building that. But yeah, I have actually planned out all of the different shell buildings from Late Night that I want to use. Like, it was something that I planned out in advance. I have a really great selection that really helps to stagger down the skyline moving southwards towards Bridgeview and all that. So it really helps to make the skyline look very full, and also it helps to make it make sense. And Midtown is a part of that transition into a shorter skyline. And you guys are going to see that, not in this build necessarily, and definitely not in the next build, because I use a tower for that as well. But in the third build after that, you'll see that there's a real step down in height. And yeah, the western block of Midtown here really does have a nice combination of towers and mid-rise structures. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy how that all steps down in height, and really help to see that I have a real vision for Midtown and for the rest of SimCity, and that there is some sort of logic to the urban landscape that I'm trying to build here. Another thing that I added into this lot as well, like just to continue building on to that idea of there being some sort of urban grunge, is I also added in the food truck. Now, the food truck came with a mod that is available from Mod The Sims, and if I'm smart, I'll remember to link it in the description so that you guys can just get your hands on it yourself. It works perfectly for me, although sometimes I have multiple food trucks spawn and I just like have to use objects delete, but whatever, that's not a bad problem to have in my opinion. But yeah, the food trucks are something that I'm sure I've explained before, but I only plan to use the food trucks within the inner city neighborhoods here. Like, you won't be finding them out in Blue Water Village or beyond, because it just doesn't make sense to have them there. Although one could make the case that they could be found in some sort of an outlying beach, but I don't care to do that. And to me, I feel like food trucks are more suited for a denser urban environment here. So I'm keeping them to the inner city neighborhoods, and I'm not going to make any apologies for that either. But if you do download the mod yourself, there's nothing stopping from you, the player, from adding it into some other lots of yours if you so feel is necessary. But yeah, the food truck is certainly something that I'm using quite liberally in all of the inner city neighborhoods, just on community lots where I feel like it makes sense. Here, because I do have a subway station, I'm just placing it nearby, adding in some seating just to give players that little taste of, I guess, like an outdoor patio, like just a pop-up outdoor patio that maybe the food truck kind of places out there for people to enjoy and to have seats at and all that. But yeah, that is really a lot of the vision there. I even did like an unloading area into the mid-rise structure, and I was very careful to use the same wallpaper sidings that I used way back in the harbor build, so that the trailers that are parked in there match the trailers from the SimCity harbor build that I did, just to again help do that storytelling, in that whatever gets delivered at the harbor makes its way around the city. When designing out the interior of the mid-rise structure, I guess of the hotel and also the runway and all that, I kind of jump around just a little bit, and that's because, well, I think I explained it in the Goth Manor, but sometimes when I'm jumping around, what that just really means is that I've lost inspiration, or I've lost momentum when decorating a certain place or building out a certain place, but I've got other ideas that I had in mind. So that's kind of what you guys will be seeing. You'll be seeing me jump from hotel to the actual event space, which is set up to be a runway, and back and forth. Another reason that I did this is really because, as I explained a little earlier, I wanted the stage, the runway stage, to actually be on a foundation as opposed to one of those short little platforms from the late night expansion pack, or at least I'm pretty sure it came from the late night expansion pack. In fact, I'm 90% sure it did, because I remember like the use of bands and all that, and that's a whole other thing that I've got to take into consideration going forward that I don't even want to necessarily address in this SimCity build, to be quite honest with you guys, but I'll complain about that at a later time, I guess. But anyways, for me, the stage needs to be on an actual foundation. It just makes for a more impactful platform, but placing that within a structure and having it walled and all that just kind of makes things a lot more complicated. And when you have like a ground floor level and a foundation level within The Sims 3 that's indoors and enclosed and all that, it just, you know, it does make things really complicated, especially when it comes to trying to light it all up. And it's something that I try to avoid, or I try to make these kind of spaces really small. This is a place where I couldn't make the place really small because I needed to put seating just in front of the runway stage and all of that. So my hand was a little forced when it came to that. And I also didn't want to play a lot with the constrained floors elevation false cheats, just because I feel like even though I could have made the stage shorter, that I really didn't want to mess up the rest of it, because you can really mess up the way that the ground floor meets the stage, and I just didn't want to overcomplicate an already complicated build. So I decided to just keep the foundation level the same standard level that it always is, and just use that as the stage. It still messes up the lighting and all that, but I think that just with the placement of some fake lights, or sorry, some of the invisible lights from the by debug mode, I was really able to just kind of navigate that in a way that's kind of graceful, and it still lights up both the ground level and the foundation level as well. So hopefully I explained that right, but I really just, yeah, it can be a struggle sometimes. Speaking of which, one of the struggles with mixing foundation levels and ground levels indoors, in this case, I had to replace the foundation levels at the edges for most of them, or at least for half of this structure that just kind of backs out into the alleyway with walls that are at the same size as the foundation. That can just like complicate things a little bit here and there, but it really only complicates things when you want to place a door somewhere. Namely, I usually do this same method when placing garages or garage doors, because I always I build garages at ground level, and I usually have them attached to a building that's on a foundation, or to a house that's on a foundation. So it's sort of a similar thing that happen here, and you'll see that when we actually get to the when I get to building an archway with an arch doorway into that leads into like the makeup station and all that. Like, it just kind of makes the walls look funny when you're painting it with wallpaper, which is such a shame, but whatever. It's a game mechanic that I have learned to tolerate, and I'm hoping that you guys will tolerate it as well within this build. But yeah, in the actual event space itself, I wanted to make, I definitely wanted like a makeup station. I really wanted it to feel like that busy runway situation, just to pay that proper reference to The Sims 1's Gast District itself. Now, I don't think that the runway area was as extensive, like to include a makeup station and a changing area, but I decided to put it in here because I really wanted to make it very clear that this event space and event hotel is owned by the Gast District, who really sets the style for the rest of SimCity and for the Sims universe, I suppose, and that it's a high fashion brand. And so yeah, I really wanted to emulate that within this build. And even though it is all set dressing, essentially, it's set dressing that players can choose to play in. And yeah, I really think that it still turned out pretty well. I love the fact that there is a makeup station, a changing room area, and it all feels very cramped and possibly chaotic, which I think is a realistic reflection of fashion shows in real life, just because not all fashion shows take place in event spaces. Some take place like in public spaces, and you have to have makeshift makeup stations and changing areas and all that. So yeah, I really wanted to bring that little bit of chaos here. Well, organized chaos, since this is an event space after all, but chaos nonetheless. And it also is adjacent to a receiving area so that you can receive props and stuff. And I even placed some decorative, like, they're archways that came with Into the Future. And if you're not seeing them on screen, I will be placing them later on the runways itself, just to kind of give it that more real, that more futuristic look and very cutting edge and all that. So, yeah, and in order to get those archways through the door, they would have to come through the receiving area. So I felt that the receiving area and having it shared with the change rooms was something that is, again, realistic and reflective of that chaotic energy that these spaces see when you need to redesign a space and to make it a fashion runway. I used to work in a convention center myself, just as a bartender, and, you know, within a space, you can really see how just by doing a couple of changes here and there to your stages and to your platforms, that you can really have it look completely different, as long as you've got that large open area or that blank canvas to work with. And so, you know, when you have those other important areas such as makeup stations or change rooms, those are usually afterthoughts. And they're just really sequestered or designed in a way that's to, you know, just service and to be able to function the way that they are doing, or function the way that they need to in as little space as possible, because the rest of the space is really reserved for the public and to present like whatever they're presenting in these larger events. Hope I'm explaining that right. Sometimes I get a little long-winded and I can lose my point sometimes, but yeah, I really wanted that to be reflected in this build as well. And even though this is set dressing, like, this is a lot of energy for set dressing in terms of it not actually being legitimately functional in this kind of sense, I felt it was very necessary to pay that proper reference to the Gast District, like I keep explaining. For the space between the actual stage area and I guess the hotel reception area, I've kind of created some sort of a gathering room there, and I have purposely placed no chairs in there. And the idea behind that was really that Sims would be gathering in that area, of course, and just kind of congregating just before they enter the actual event space. This area is really not designed for people or for Sims to really relax in, but rather it's just sort of like a secondary reception area that you just engage with. And it's not a place for you to relax, but it's just for you, a place for like Sims and for Sims to just kind of congregate in and I guess exchange small talk, meet up with their group members, maybe use the bathroom before going into the actual event space, and just to kind of keep it moving. It's not designed so that you actually relax and spend a significant amount of time there. It's a place that actually it's a space that actually tries to facilitate movement from the hotel reception area into the rest of the lot. Or at least that's what the design intention was about, hence why I never placed any kind of chairs or any kind of places for Sims to just kind of relax in and all that. I mean, I think I placed a chocolate fountain in there, which is kind of hilarious. So you can still like have a snack there, you can have hors d'oeuvres, I suppose, but it's all set dressing. And really the majority of today's episode is building out the set dressing, which is in a way unfortunate, but it also just kind of speaks to how the late night business tower object really did a lot of the heavy lifting for me in terms of the design, whereas I actually had to design this mid-rise structure that's attached to it all myself. So a lot of the heavy lifting is really done with those shell buildings. I keep forgetting what they're called in the middle of these episodes, even though I just talked about them. But yeah, another part of the set dressing here is the elevators. The elevators in the mid-rise structure go absolutely nowhere. The idea here is just to really show that, you know, Sims that actually check into the hotel portion of this building take the elevators to their rooms. Well, the upper floors are all have all got like hidden markers dropped on them, so it's not like you can actually see what the other floors have. And it also goes to just kind of show that you can't even take the elevators elsewhere. Like I didn't even place elevators on the upper floors of the mid-rise structure here. So again, it's all there as set dressing that I had to use to really try to justify that this is indeed a recreation and an updated version of what the Gast District really evolved into. The bathrooms that I placed in there are quite extensive. I feel that like for event spaces like this, you do need larger bathrooms. And for those of you that play with the cults and all that, like if you do have like witches or wizards, these kind of community lots are great for you to skill up your magic skills with. I don't really play with them myself, but I do know of how they work. And I know that as soon as you get to the spells where you can upgrade different appliances and stuff, like you can really go around some of these community lots and upgrade all of the things there if you run out of things to upgrade in your own home. So it can be a great way for Sims to skill up. And I'm not just talking about this lot in particular, but all of the ones that I've really created in SimCity. So just a little tip there if you are looking to upgrade your witch's magic but have no idea what you want to do. That could be a little project that you could do. Another thing that you guys are going to see me build, and it's one of the elements of today's build that might deserve a little bit of a rework or a bit of an edit, is just the offstage bridge that I used on top of the catwalk. In my opinion, you would have those kind of offstage bridges just like sitting on top where like lights dangle down from, and that stage crew would be using to create events. Perhaps there's even like a backdrop that gets lowered down. I don't really know myself in terms of what offstage structure is required for these kind of event spaces, but I decided to just kind of build it, and I pretty much lost momentum as soon as I built it. I was just like, okay, it's a couple of bridges, just gonna make them like steel bridges and they're black, and that was really it. So I pretty much lost momentum and I just left it as it was, and there's no real lead up to the bridges, which could be something I might want to do, but at the same time I just have no idea where I would place those kinds of stairs or ladders or what have you. But yeah, that was just like an element of today's build that I really just feel either needs to be reworked or maybe revisited upon, or perhaps even edited. But overall, like, I'm very happy with the rest of the build going forward. And once we get into the business tower and I actually place the stylist objects properly, you guys will see how this vision really comes about. I mean, this is where you know, the professionals in the office tower design their fashion designs for, so that they can be presented to the public in ways that is very popular, and you know, in ways that like makes the actual covers of magazines that they themselves design. So yeah, there's a lot of confluence between the office tower, and a big relationship between the office tower, I should say, and the actual stage itself. I also wanted to mention that for the hotel itself, it is very reminiscent, like for the design of the spa that I was doing. In fact, I'm pretty sure I even used a similar color palette or the same color palette, which again kind of suggests to me that maybe I need to relook at the spa, because I'm not exactly a fan of how the spa's structure looks per se, but I am a fan of how this one looks more. And I think I could just do a lot more with that. So it might be something that is indeed on the chopping block for something that I have to redo in the future. So we'll just kind of see what happens with that if I do decide to actually go back and edit even more on that kind of end there. But yeah, we'll just I'll just see how that kind of shakes out to be. But yeah, back to the actual building here. When it came to the Gast District, I really, again, wanted to show that it is a very, like the offstage parts are very chaotic, but the onstage areas and the actual event space itself is very organized. And yeah, I really love how the runway actually turned out. And using the white tiles, they aren't actually lit up per se, but they look lit up when you have the rest of the background as pretty much a black color scheme. So I feel that everything was really well done. The stage was properly highlighted the way that I wanted it highlighted, and I didn't place any kind of floors in the upper levels just because I envisioned that this kind of event space would have really tall ceilings. One thing that I've kind of recently discovered since starting this SimCity project and building out all the lots is that there really aren't any good room dividers. Like, I've really struggled to find like either good room dividers or partitions or anything of the sort. And I mean, maybe there's something in the Sims 3 store that I just haven't really looked at or really downloaded, but I just, like, none of them are really vibing. I find that they're either like too open, or in the case of the ones that I used in the makeup room, they're like almost too closed off. I just feel like there isn't a really graceful one. And even when I was doing the Goth Manor build, when I was using room dividers for some of the rooms in there, specifically for the master suite quarters, I wasn't exactly a huge fan of those room dividers when I was looking at it. And even though I recolored it and stuff, it was like the best that I could do at that point. So yeah, I need more partitions or room dividers somewhere. If you guys have any recommendations, feel free to drop your suggestion in a comment below. I don't mind looking outside of the Sims 3 store, but I do want to kind of stick to the Sims 3 store where I can, just because I'm very paranoid when it comes to actually downloading anything from outside of that. So EA has kind of got me, they got me in terms of like taking my money for these Sims 3 purchases. But hey, you know, I'll accept that advice where I can. But yeah, feel free, don't shy away from dropping a suggestion if you know of a really great partition download. I mean, I downloaded that one chandelier that's from outside of the Sims 3 store, and I love it to pieces, and I'm so glad that I downloaded it. And it doesn't look too out of the ordinary, because I like having my objects all look like they belong to the same family and that they all have a similar style, which is why I mostly stick to the Sims 3 store, since I find that other objects that are created are just kind of, they detract a little too far away from the actual Sims 3 store, from the Sims 3 style itself. But anyways, I'm kind of getting off topic here. The other thing that I kind of wanted to share is that, you know, if I had all of the flexibility in the world with this game, the set dressing building, like the hotel and the event space, would legitimately be attached to the office tower, and they would all match in exterior styles and all of that. So it would just be like an office tower on the corner with a mid-rise block extending out from it alongside the street. That would be the ultimate vision that I would have liked to have delivered on, but because this is The Sims 3, that vision isn't exactly executed perfectly. So it does look a little bit like there's two different buildings being constructed here, and that would not have been a part of the vision when designing out this particular lot if I had it up to myself and all of the limitless creative options that I could use when building this. So that was something that I kind of had to fight with. And, you know, in that same breath, I'm also very limited by the shell building itself. And, you know, when looking back on it, like with using all of the late night shells, I find that the design inside each of the shells is very limited, and particularly I have issues with the tower shells. I love the look of them, don't get me wrong, like I love how each of the tower shells look, but when you have when you're designing for it on the inside, the amount of space that you have can actually be very limited. A very good example is the penthouse build that I did, and also the Champagne's exclusive lounge that I did. In that one, the base of the shell was larger than the upper floors of the shell, and so you kind of have this tiered look to it, and it doesn't always match when you go into the map view, because you can have walls sticking out, which is something that I did try to avoid with those, and it's something that I'll continue to avoid doing going forward. But you know, it just limits your space as a builder when the shell kind of dictates how much interior space you have to work with. Now, it's miles ahead better than The Sims 4, because I don't even think you can place these kind of towers in The Sims 4 as far as I know, but the shell buildings themselves have limitations, and the shell towers that are in The Sims 3 Late Night and in all of the expansion packs, really, like, they're not the best in terms of offering a lot of space for players to actually use, and you'll see that in this build as well. This is one of the better towers, by the way, in my opinion, because it's just a square and it retains the same amount of squares that you can build on for the upper floors. So, you know, it isn't as limiting as some of the other ones, and you'll see in the next build as well that I had to work with a shell that was actually quite small, even though it looks quite large on the exterior. But I'll explain that in the next episode where I do build that one out. In this one, the shell wasn't so bad. And the really tricky part about working with these shells, again, is the space that you're offered, but also placing the elevators, because they require you to place the elevators. And so the elevators take a lot of space, and it forces my hand as a builder to find that balance between realism and something that makes sense gameplay wise, that doesn't take up so much space. In this case, I found a really great balance here in placing about 4 elevators just on the northern wall, just right alongside it. And, you know, it allowed me in the tower portion of this build to really build out a nice little entrance area that's pretty straightforward. I dropped, again, another hidden marker just in the space that I didn't use, because again, when you're building in these shells, that ground level is always like a couple of floors tall, and it just looks awkward to me. That is one thing that I wish that none of the shells had, was this awkward multi-level floored walls that you can't adjust to save your life. I mean, all you needed is just the just like 1 floor level, and then you drop in the elevator. But you know, I'm not gonna spend this whole episode really complaining about the shells, but the design choice that I made was I really wanted the elevators to be on one side, and then as you go up, you'll find the other amenities there. Speaking of which, again, I keep mentioning it, but this is a fashion office. And so for this office design, I really wanted it to be an open concept with some meeting rooms and also some breakout spaces as well. So that was kind of the interior design going forward. I also have to put in the styling station somewhere. And, you know, this is, the community lot is classified as a stylist or something of the sort. It's the stylist community lot. Maybe I don't remember the name verbatim, but this is one of the few community lots that I'm actually open to having multiple versions of throughout the rest of SimCity. And that's because, you know, in my opinion, it wouldn't make sense for everyday Sims to visit this lot just to get a makeover. This would be something more so reserved for Sims that are in that higher tax bracket or in that 1%. And yeah, they would probably visit here, hire a professional stylist and all that, and, you know, get restyled and all that. So, you know, I do have plans, and I have planned out to put in another stylist community lot within SimCity, and actually in one of the inner core neighborhoods in Uptown, if I remember correctly. So in a future build, I totally plan on building out some sort of like a neighborhood stylist community lot, and that would of course like include a tattoo artist along with it. I have a whole vision for that, but it just kind of goes to show that the intentions with this lot was to really appeal to a certain clientele, whereas the neighborhood stylist is going to feel a lot more accessible to Sims from all walks of life. So that plan is certainly in the works. It's not going to be something that you guys will see for quite a long time, if I'm going to be honest, since it's in one of the inner city neighborhoods that we really don't get to, not for a little while here. But that was something that I just wanted to share with you guys, that there is a vision, and it's very rare for me to do, but if it makes sense, and in this case I think it will, I'll actually build multiple versions of the same community lot. Now, I don't know how it's going to work in the actual game, and if the stylist NPCs are just going to be confused with each other or whatnot, but we'll just kind of see and cross that bridge when we get there. I don't think it's ever I don't think it's too big of a deal, since I have played with multiple stylist lots before, but again, we'll just kind of see. One really cool design choice that I made was I used the shelves as kind of like wall dividers. I'm definitely going to use that going forward. I thought it looked really good, or really cool. But the only thing with those shelves is that I wish they didn't have like those little lips underneath it just for cleaner lines. I wish it was just like a straight up one panel shelf there that didn't have those lips just underneath it, but whatever. Yeah, this is The Sims 3, and sometimes I just have to make do with what we got, but I felt like it just added in such a cool effect here that I decided to just kind of carry on with it and just to add in those multiple shelves. I have plans to do that in future builds, and you guys will just have to wait and see what I do for that, because this is an idea that I had that I decided to put in here, and I absolutely love the way that it looked, so I'm going to be using it in other places. This lot, as you may have guessed, was designed as a multi-story office. A little bit of inspiration came from that new Cruella movie. Never actually saw it myself, but I did watch a trailer and I really liked the way that the office was done, and considering that it was a fashion office, I was like, okay, this can actually work as a multi-story office. Now, that was kind of where the reference ends, because the rest of this is obviously designed to be more of a modern interpretation of an office that you would see in like tech offices and other creative offices. So I obviously didn't carry on with the inspiration there, but I liked the layout and I was like, okay, this can maybe work into something there. Each of the levels, by the way, are going to each have different purposes for it, or at least designed to look like they have different purposes for it. So the ground floor is obviously for makeover clients and for clients that have paid for styling services. You'll see that in the one room there, and I even put in some additional mirrors there just to give Sims like a 360 view of the styling services that they're purchasing. I try to also like put in some additional not makeover stations, but makeup dressers, makeup stations, beauty stations, I guess. I don't even know what the proper term is, but I put in additional ones there just to try to like really emulate that it is a place where you can not only style yourself and get that 360 degree view of the mirrors and whatnot, but you've also got like a whole makeup station that the stylist can dress up their clients at. So, you know, I felt that I did a pretty good job with that. I feel like it also is nice to kind of have it private as well. But yeah, the other part of the ground floor is really a boardroom, and this is like a big meeting room to discuss concepts and maybe to share ideas and all that. This is kind of where the floor that I intended it to be, the reception where Sims would just kind of come in and sign into reception, but also the space where you would discuss concepts, discuss big vision things, perhaps even discuss marketing. And yeah, this is where your big vision is really explored and where the first draft kind of gets presented and all of that. And also you can style your clients just in the room across from the big boardroom here. And that's where the clothing racks kind of come into play as well. Maybe you're maybe these fashion professionals are discussing a certain concept and they have like an example of like last year's collection that they wanted to repurpose or take inspiration from. So it was kind of the idea when designing out this boardroom, is just to really give it like a specific purpose going forward. The other floors are a little more, well, the second floor is definitely more practical. It's kind of like after you've discussed your concept, how do you develop it further? And that's really where the computers kind of come into play here, because I imagine that at a fashion office, specifically a fashion office that designs for a magazine, you're obviously going to need someone that does graphic design work. And you probably have an entire creative team developed to just the digital design of it all. So that's where all of these computers kind of come into play here in a way that like protects the privacy of the actual designs that you're doing, but also keeping the office as open concept as possible. And that's where the other room comes into play as well. Maybe you've got like a specific like maybe after discussing the concepts in the meeting room below, you have your fashion designers that actually, you know, draft up some rough drafts in the drafting room there. And that's also an object that stylists need to use as well. Same with architectural professionals in The Sims 3 is a drafting table to actually develop their design. So there was also a purpose for that too, and a purpose that I really tried to embrace here, that you'd likely, after having your entire team meet in the ground level big boardroom, suddenly your designers have a space to actually work in, and they'd have like some decent views and all of that in this open office concept that they can just close the door and kind of get the privacy there. I tried to incorporate like little elements of fashion clothes and racks and some of the, I guess they might be called models. There's definitely a proper term for them, and I definitely don't know what it is, but I tried to incorporate like little fashion objects here and there, just to again try to establish the identity that this is indeed a fashion office. I might actually go back and redo some of this in an upcoming Midtown edit video, I suppose, where I extend out the second floor, because you know the floor plate that I am given with this particular shell is actually quite limiting, and these guys don't even have a bathroom. They have to go all the way to the hotel to use the bathroom, or they're just told to hold it. I guess these fashion offices are cutthroat like that, but I might actually go back and add some additional floor space to the second floor. The third floor of the office is obviously the CEO of the fashion office themselves. They get their own private office. They get an entire floor to themselves. They have a little bit of everything. There's a desk there, a couple of chairs to intimidate whoever they're talking to, I suppose. And yeah, little bits and pieces of what that fashion CEO would look like. If you have a sim that you want to make as a stylist and they've worked their way up to being whatever the final career is of the fashion thing, perhaps this is their office that they work in. I believe I even added in a drafting table, if I was smart enough to, so that you could literally have your sims just working directly out of this office. I don't know how that's going to work with multiple stylist community lots, but this is a place where you can kind of live out that story for your sims if you so choose to. With the executive office, though, this one, again, might be something that is up on the chopping block to be edited, because I just feel like overall it was kind of underwhelming. I tried to incorporate the storytelling of the boardroom and the drafting rooms and all of that, and maybe a little bit of, I tried to incorporate all of the stories so that it all makes its way to the executive office for final approval, but I'm not too sure if that story is actually being conveyed and told there. And I might just have to explore a little bit as to how I want that to show. Maybe I'll put in like one of those little stage objects from Late Night that I keep complaining about in this episode up on here, just so that you could have like a model, maybe model something there. I don't know, but that's just an idea that I'm just saying out loud for myself. But if you guys have any ideas, feel free to sound off in the comment section below. I'd love to take a look at them. With all that said, I am going to end off the episode here. In the next speed build episode, we are going to be tackling a vampire lounge, and I'm going to be quite honest with you. I am not entirely sure how that turned out. So you guys will be able to at least watch a train wreck, if nothing else. But anyways, I'm just going to leave it here for today. If you enjoyed this video and if you've been enjoying the work that I've been putting out, then feel free to like this video and consider subscribing if you haven't already. If the tours aren't already playing, then feel free to stick around for those. But in the meantime, I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and that I hope you have yourself a wonderful day.